Okay, so this is day 2. So if you're just joining, you haven't seen like any of the instructions and you're struggling with this, I highly recommend you go and watch Friday's video, because for this section, you need to know how to complete the square. And that's going to be the part that you guys probably struggle with, is completing the square. So quick little review from Friday. Again, if you're struggling, I recommend you go watch the video, but these are some of the information that you were given on Friday. So there's 2 different scenarios. There's where you have an XY value and where you don't. So in this case, your B is equal to 0. So there is no XY value that would cancel out. And if that's the case, then you can look at your A and C values to determine the type of conic. Okay, the second scenario is where that B value does not equal 0. In other words, in your equation, you have that XY. So you have that XY. If you have that XY, then you need to look at the discriminant to figure out the type of conic. So 2 scenarios, you can either look at your AC, depending if there's no XY term in it. If there is an XY term, then you need to look at what we call the discriminant. So the discriminant is that piece that's under the radical for that quadratic formula. So again, biggest struggle is going to be completing the square. So let's go through, let's work through these and see what we end up with. All right, so looking here at my first problem. So these are all going to be from your assignment section. It says the equation here represents a conic. The conic represented by the equation is a what, because why? Okay, so a lot going on. First of all, there is no XY term, right? There's no XY term, which means that our B value was equal to 0. If that's the case, then all you need to do is look at your A and your C value. And again, there were several scenarios. So if we're looking at just our A and C value, is A equal to C? Is A times C greater than 0? Is A or C equal to 0? So that means you wouldn't have an A or you wouldn't have a C. And is AC less than 0? So those are your 4 scenarios. Again, A is with the X squared, C is with your Y squared. So when I look at this example, this is my A value, this is my C value. So A is equal to 3, C is equal to 3. They are equal to the same value. So A is equal to C. If that happens, then I should know it is a circle. So if A is equal to C, A is equal to C, it's a circle. So this in case it is a circle. Why? Because A is equal to C. My next one, it says check all that apply, check all that apply. And it says, which of the following would produce a parabola? We're looking for a parabola. Okay, so there's 2 different cases here. Excuse me. So these 2 have my X and Y. So these ones are going to be different than my A and my C. So if I have no X and Y, so no X and Y, my B is equal to 0, that's when I use A and C. So when I look here, here's my A value. So I know A is equal to 0. There is no Y squared, right? There is no Y squared. Since there is no Y squared, there is no C value. There's no C value because there's no Y squared. If that's the case, oh, sorry, I put A is equal to -5. Sorry. A is equal to -5. There's no C value. There's no Y squared. So that C is equal to 0. It doesn't exist. It's like saying I have 0 Y squareds here, right? We don't show that. We don't need to show that. So my C is equal to 0. If A is equal to 0 or C is equal to 0, it is a parabola. And when we're talking about this right here, my C is equal to 0, so this is a parabola. My next case, here's my A, here's my C. So I have A is equal to -1, C is equal to 1. Neither of them are a value of 0, so it's not a parabola. My A and my C again. So here, this is my C value. I'm looking for my A. There's no X squared term. So my A is equal to 0 because there's no X squared term. My C is equal to -5. So I have an A is equal to 0, one of them is equal to 0, then it's a parabola. I didn't check these two yet because it's different if my B is not equal to 0. If it's not equal to 0, then I need to use my B squared minus 4AC. B squared minus 4AC. So if I'm looking for a parabola, I'm looking for that to equal 0. So for these two, I'm using my B squared minus 4AC. And if it equals 0, it's a parabola. So these two are going to be done that way because they have that XY term. So here's my A, B, C. I don't use my D, E, or F. It's just these values here. So I don't need to worry about labeling the rest. So this is going to be negative 12 squared minus 4 times 9 times 4. Negative 12 squared is 144. 4 times 4 is 16. 16 times 9 is 144. So it's minus 144 equals 0. Since this is equal to 0, it is a parabola. It is a parabola. Over here, this is my A, my B, my C. So I have 10 squared minus 4 times 20 times negative 1 gives me 100. Negative 4 times a negative 1 gives me positive 4 times 20 is going to be 80. So this is going to equal 180. That is not equal to 0. So this is not a parabola. Not a parabola. So these three are parabolas. The other two are not. Alrighty, let's keep rocking and rolling. Complete the square to write the general form equation, this equation right here, in the standard form. So because of your answer choices, you should know that you're going to have some type of ellipse because it's a plus all in between. So let's go ahead and work out how do we complete the square for this. So if you guys recall from Friday's lesson, first thing I want to do is group my x's together, group my y's. So I'm going to group these two together, I'm going to group these together, and I'm going to move my constant to the right side. So I end up with 2x squared plus, oops, sorry, it's minus 12x plus, and then I always add in my blank. And this is going to be plus a y squared plus 8y plus blank is equal to, I'm going to move my 8 over, so that becomes a negative 8. And whatever I add here and add here, I have to add to both sides, right? We have to keep it balanced. So if I add something here, whatever I add here, I have to add to the right side as well. If I add something to the left, I have to add it to the right so that I'm not changing my equation. Same thing here. So whatever I add here, I have to add here as well so that I'm keeping it balanced. The left side is still equal to the right side. Okay, so there's a problem with this one. When I say complete the square, you guys, a lot of times you guys are getting the pattern down after reviewing it. But the biggest trick to it is that you guys forget about when you have a constant other than 1. I have this 2 here. I cannot complete the square because the coefficient of the square term is not 1. So I have to factor out that 2, in this case, this 2. I have to factor out that coefficient so that I end up with a value of 1. So if I factor out this 2, I'm left with x squared minus 6x plus my blank. And then I still have everything else over here. So this one was already value 1, so I don't have to factor anything out. So plus, this is going to be y squared plus my 8y plus my blank is equal to negative 8 plus my blank plus my blank. But there's a trick here. When I factor out this 2, I can't change this equation, isn't changing, it just looks different. It just went ahead and factored it out, but it's equal to what's above. In other words, this is 2 times my x squared gives me 2x squared, right? This is 2 times negative 6x gives me my negative 12x. This 2 goes to each term. So this 2 is also being multiplied to whatever this unknown number is. So what I'm adding to my left side is 2 times this value. So what I need to add over here would be 2 times whatever that value is. So that's the biggest trick. This 2 out in front here has to also go here as well, so that we're adding the same values to both sides. Now for the completing the square part. I like this part. This part, once you get the pattern, it's easy peasy. So I take whatever number's here, it's a negative 6. I cut it in half. So negative 6 divided by 2 is negative 3. 3 squared is 9. So that's the value I'm going to plug in here, which means that's the value that goes here. Very similarly, I look at what this number is. It's a positive 8. I cut it in half, so it's 4. I square it, gives me 16, so that's the number I put in for my blank, which means that's the number that goes there. Now that I've done that, I can write these as a perfect square. So it's 2, don't forget about that 2, it's x, and then whatever number is being squared is what goes in here with the square. So I look with the squared is going to go with the squared. In this case, it's a negative 3. Plus, this is going to be y. And I look here, this is a positive 4 that's being squared. So it's going to be plus 4 that's going to go with the square. Is equal to, so this is going to be negative 8. This is plus 18 plus 16. So this is going to give me negative 8 plus 18 gives me positive 10. Plus 16 is 26. Has to be equal to 1. So the way that I make it equal to 1 is I divide everything by 26. So this simplifies to just the value of 1. 2 goes into 26 13 times. So my answer is going to be x minus 3 squared all over 13 plus y plus 4 squared all over 26 is equal to 1. And this is the answer we were looking for. And that is what answer choice. That is this one right there. If you guys have questions, I go too fast, please let me know. All right, I'm going to go ahead and flip. All right, so this one says complete the square for this equation. Now this one's a little bit trickier, so I tried to pick out some of the tough ones to work with. So let's look at this. We're going to write in standard form and identify the key features. So we know, because they told us this is the standard form, it has a negative there. So we already know we're going to work with a hyperbola. So I need this to look like this. So just like we did on the previous page, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to group my x's together. I'm going to group my y's together. And then I always move my constant over to the right side. So I have 4x squared plus 24x plus my something. Now this is a negative 9y. I don't write it as minus and then do a parentheses because that changes the values. So my recommendation is always just keep it as plus, and then it's negative 9y squared plus 18y plus my blank. Because if I wrote this as a negative here and I wrote this as a positive 9y and wrote this as positive 18y, my signs would be off. So this is the tricky part. So if I have a negative 9y squared here, write that together. Write that together inside your parentheses. Don't write it as a minus here. You're going to end up factoring it out so that you make sure that you take that negative out of everything in that parenthesis. Is equal to, my 9 is going to become a positive plus my blank plus my blank. All right, so again, we have values that are not equal to 1 for my coefficients. I have a 4, and I have a negative 9. So we're going to have to factor those out. So I'm going to have to pull out a 4 from here. And when I do that, I'm left with x squared plus 6x plus blank. Plus, I'm going to pull out a negative 9. So if I plot a negative 9, then I'm going to go ahead and write this as minus 9. Now I'm pulling out a negative, which means my signs are going to change, right? So it's going to be a y squared. This now becomes negative 2y plus my blank is equal to 9 plus, now be careful. Some of you guys want to change this sign right here, leave it as a plus because it's dependent on this value. That value has a sign that's changed. So when I work with this, it's going to be that plus, so it's not affecting that factoring out. You're factoring out the values that are actually there that you can physically see. So this has a positive, you know it's a positive and you have to factor it out. This last one, do not change, do not pull out the negative or change these last ones, those blanks to a negative, so you'll get the wrong answer. Okay, so when I look at this, I have my 4 here, and I have a negative 9 here. Make sure that you include those pieces. It's going to be 4 times whatever that value is. It's 4 times whatever this value is. You need to make sure you have that value 4 times whatever it is. It's also going to be negative 9 times whatever that is. So whatever you have here, you also have to have here, so that they're equivalent, that they are balanced. Now is the easy part, completing the square. So I take my number here, cut it in half, so it becomes 3. 3 squared is 9. And there you go. This is always a square term, so it's always going to be positive too. So if you guys want to try to switch that, you're wrong because it's squared, it's always going to be a positive. Very similar here. This is a negative 2, so half of negative 2 is negative 1. Negative 1 squared is 1, so this is a value of 1. Now I could write this as a perfect square, so it's going to be 4. Whatever's being squared here, remember, goes with my perfect square. So it's going to be an x because it's an x. What's being squared is a positive 3, so plus 3. This is minus 9y, and it's going to negative 1 that's being squared, so minus 1 is equal to, this is 9 plus, this is a 36 minus 9. So those cancel out, so this is just going to be 36. I need to make sure it's set equal to 1, so I'm going to divide everything by 36. 36. And we could clean this up. 4 goes into 36 9 times. 9 goes into 36 4 times. This simplifies to a value of 1. And I end up with x plus 3 squared all over 9 minus y minus 1 squared all over 4 is equal to 1, is equal to 1. All right, so now I have some questions to answer. My first one is, what is the center? Well, this is my h and my k value. My center is going to be a negative 3, positive 1. So this is negative 3, positive 1, negative 3, 1. Remember that this is my a squared term. Whatever comes first is a squared. This is going to be b squared. So a has to equal 3. B is going to equal 2. So 3, 2. My slope. So sometimes you guys are like, well, I don't know which way my slope is. If you can't remember the equation, that in this case it's going to be b over a. So I know that my parabolas are going to open this direction, right? So this distance here, if I want to figure out my asymptote slope, I know that because it's x first, they're going to open this way. So I always go up and then over. So this is my a value, right? This is my a, my f would be my b. So in this case, it'd be b over a, b over a. So I read this as b over a, and I also go up b and I go over a amount. So the equation for the slope is b over a, and in this case, it's just going to be 2/3. So I could just quickly do a quick little visual to see that I'm going up b over my a value. Or you guys might have that memorized, or you pull out your notes, whatever you prefer. Questions. All righty, my last one. So I have the graph. Okay, well, that's great. That doesn't help me though, because I don't have the equation in standard form. If I have the equation in standard form, then I can see, well, where's the center going to be? Where am I starting? If I know that center, I can already eliminate a couple of them and see, actually they all have different centers. So once I figure out where my center is, I know what graph has to match because every one of these centers are different. So let's go ahead and put this into standard form. I know it's going to be hyperbola because all the graphs are hyperbolas. So let's go ahead. I'm going to group my x's together. I'm going to group my y's, and I'm going to move my 101 over to the right side. So I have 4x squared. Oh, look, they already have these grouped. So these aren't multiplied. I'm just kind of using it to show, like I'm grouping these ones together. I'm going to group these ones together. So it's going to be 4x squared minus 16x plus blank plus, so I'm always writing plus, and then here's my other parentheses, negative 9y squared plus 54y plus my blank is equal to 101 plus blank plus blank. All right, again, problem. They don't have coefficients of 1. We've got to make my life difficult, right? I've got to do that extra step of factoring it out. So I have a value of 4 and negative 9. Notice how it's the same ones as above, so they're kind of repeat, a lot of them, so you get familiar to the same values. So again, we're going to factor these out. I'm going to factor them out. So when I factor this out, I'm going to pull out my 4, and I'm left with x squared minus 4x plus blank. I'm going to factor out a negative 9. So it's going to be minus 9, and it's going to be y squared. When I pull out a negative 9 here, that's going to leave me with negative 6y plus blank is equal to my 101 plus I have my 2 blanks. But remember, it's 4 times whatever this value is. So it's going to be 4 times that value. It's negative 9 times whatever this value is. That's one of the biggest mistakes that you guys forget, is that these coefficients go to whatever you're going to add over here to the right side. And then complete the square. I take this number. Half of negative 4 is negative 2. Negative 2 squared is 4. Half of negative 6 is negative 3. Negative 3 squared is 9. So I have a 4 and a 9. So I plug it in, a 4 and a 9. So when I write it as a perfect square, it's 4. This is going to be x, and what's being squared is a negative 2. So minus 2 squared minus 9. This is going to be y. This is a negative 3. So minus 3 squared is equal to, this is going to be 101. This is a 16, and this is a negative 81. So this is going to leave me with 36. We're almost there. Some of you guys are already tell that this is going to be your H and your K, so you could technically stop there and solve it, but I like to write it completely in standard form, so I'm going to divide everything by 36. I think it's good practice. This becomes a 9, this becomes a 4, and this becomes a 1. So I have the equation x minus 2 squared all over 9 minus y minus 3 squared all over 4 is equal to 1. This is the standard form for the equation we're looking to match the graph with. If I look here, here's my H, here's my K. Remember when we talk about our ellipses, sometimes the y comes first. So remember that y is always with the k. So sometimes you might have to flip them when you look at it. So in this case, it's h, k, it's in order. So that center is going to be at 2, 3. So I'm looking for 2, 3, and I look here and I go 2, 3. That's obviously, oops, let me try to zoom this out. So that's obviously not the center of those two. When I look here at 2, 3, that's obviously not the center of those ones. When I go here, I'm at 2, 3, that's obviously not the center of that one either. And my last one, I go 2, 3, ooh, that looks like it's the center. And I look here, this is 1, 2, 3 to the left, and it's 1, 2, 3 to the right. Yep, that's the center of the two. So this one is my match. So this is the only one that had the right center. And I can see A was going to be a value of A squared, so A is a value of 3. If you guys don't have any questions, then I'll let you guys go. If you have any further questions, please, please, please let me know. All righty. Well, you have a wonderful day. I will see you guys tomorrow. Bye.